Hey, sports cards fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan here with Don, Don's Field of Dreams Cards, and this is another episode of Two Guys, One Hobby. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing well. Happy New Year. I believe this is our first episode for 2024, isn't it?
Yes, first of 2024. Hopefully the first of many. I really enjoy doing these with you, bringing on some really cool guests and having some great conversations. So
absolutely. So the guest we have tonight, I'm kind of giving it away a little bit here. I'm wearing his swag, so we might as well bring him on.
Yeah,
since we give it away here. But b1gscott35, how are you, Scott?
All right. Licking my wounds from last night's game, but okay.
Yeah. Same here.
I'm actually at work. There's 7 guys. We did a draft. You get to pick 2 teams, and I had the 6th pick out of 7, and then it snaked. And I have Kansas City and the Texans, so I came out unscathed this weekend. But one of the guys had Dallas and the Dolphins, so he's already done.
I hope he didn't have to pay about a point. Oh, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to start off with how I met Scott, and it was at the National in Chicago in 21, and I was at Robert Prestige Collectibles booth, and I see Robert say, "Hey, Don," and I don't know who Robert is at this time.
Right.
And I look behind me thinking he's talking to someone, and he's looking right at me, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, you must have me. I don't think we know each other, you know." He's like, "Don, Field of Dreams cards." Like, no one. I was like, someone actually has watched my channel, and Scott happened to be standing right next to me, and I didn't know Scott at this point. And Robert introduced us to each other. He said, "Here's another YouTuber," and a little over 2 years later, we become good friends, and we chat every once in a while, and we hung out. I believe we hung out later on at that national because I think you were showing me Clemente stuff and 2
nights, and we walked around a little bit.
Yeah, so it's funny how YouTube pulls people together. But I was I honestly thought the guy was talking to somebody else.
Oh, I met you, Scott, in passing. I think it was at the 21 National. We were leaving the Bill Murray's restaurant there. And I was there with my wife and Brandon's baseball cards and his brother. And we were leaving. I just turned. I'm like, "Scott." I'm like, "Hi." And it was just a quick thing as we were leaving. He was waiting for a table and stuff. But that was my first meeting with him. And
that's one thing about, well, Don could test this too. You're a taller guy, bigger guy. He's tall. I'm wider, but we get spotted in the crowd. And that night at the Bill Murray restaurant, that was a packed house that night.
Yeah.
So easy to spot us. But 2021, that was kind of that was my best national. That's chasing the dragon after that one.
That was my first national as well.
Wasn't my first, just my favorite one.
Okay.
So because I met so many, I was a YouTuber before, but I never really put myself out there, right? Kind of, hey, going up to people,
right?
Really talk to people. But that year, things just kind of, I was noticed, talked to a lot more. So that was a very, very fun year.
And I met you at that. I met you at that national as well, John. I don't know if you remember. The first person I ran into was Chuck, Northside guy. We walked around and we were waiting down at the bar because that's where we thought the YouTube get together was. And your wife showed up, and I think Rich Gossage was down there. And then I think Moynihan came down and was like, "No, we're all upstairs." We had no clue. We're just standing down there like, where is everyone?
Yeah. And Don, with our little bit of interactions, or at least me seeing you on your videos and stuff, I just didn't get a sense of how tall you were. And then, of course, I see you at the bar. And I go, "Oh, hi, Don. How are you?" Kind of
like Moynihan said
I'm
that.
5'7", so I'm like the shortest one around.
Yeah, that first national, I shocked a lot of people. They had no idea. Because they used to talk about how tall Bob Lewis is. And I had met Bob Lewis in person before that. And I'm like, I tower over Bob Lewis. I remember Eric, those back pages. He did, I was like, "Hey, Eric," and he had this glazed look on his face. Like, he was like, "Holy shit, you're tall." And he's pretty tall himself.
Yeah. I do have the picture of you and Legends Never Ticket Leprechaun. I always got to throw that name still in there, where he's standing on a chair at Atlantic City with y'all two.
Yeah.
Even
there it is. Yeah.
There it is. I have no idea why that was randomly just laying there. That's hilarious. That was not the setup or plan.
Yeah. So national. Hey, we're only 6 months away now. So
yeah, it'll be here quick.
Starting to get geared up for it. So,
yeah. So what are we talking about tonight? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
I know y'all are. Are any one of y'all going to that Strongsville?
Yep.
Show?
Yeah, I am. That's only a 2-hour drive for me.
That's what that's what I knew. I kind of expect. I thought Don, I heard you say you were, and John, you're going as well.
Yeah, it's a 5-hour drive for me. Not too bad. I made the trip just for work to Erie, and so hopping over to Cleveland isn't that far once you've gone that far to Erie.
Right.
That's no big deal for me to drive out there.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going, but that's on my list of shows I would like to get to sometime.
Yeah, this would be my first. I haven't been there before. You have, Dawn.
Yeah, this will be my third. I drove out with Dean Gearhart. I collect everything. The one year we just drove up for the day and drove back. And then last year I stayed overnight. I got there. I think I got there on Saturday and stayed with Chris from Missouri. But those guys came up the day before. Yeah. But I had to work that Friday. So
I think I haven't made the plans yet, but I heard some people, Chris, probably Mike Baseball Collector, that they're coming in Thursday night. And so I may just, that way I'm not going to be rushed on Friday to try to hit some of the floor there on Friday. So I may go up Thursday night, just take my time getting out there, not rushed. Then I'll be there Friday, Saturday, and leave Sunday.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what it's going to be like this year because it's always been at this hotel. And it's, it's kind of like the Pittsburgh show size, John. I don't know what Chantilly's like. That might be bigger, Scott, but it's basically if you picture a ballroom for a wedding and a hotel, it's kind of a room sort of like that. But I guess it's in some hockey rink next door to it this year. So they moved it, but
okay.
But Scott said it's literally next door. So it's right there.
Nice. Yeah, because it's one of my friends. I collect about everything, any range. But when it comes to vintage, I like to buy it in person. I don't like to eBay it because I have to be very particular on what I'm buying. I like to buy the best copy at a grade that I can afford. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my friends were surprised at that I only buy it in person when it comes to vintage.
Yeah, I didn't realize you did that either. I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you notice, like when I go to the national stuff, when I go to live shows is when I start really looking at stuff. I'm only a couple of cards away from having the Topps run of Clemente graded. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I've been sidetracked by getting like the Venezuela copies or the oddball stuff. Sorry, Rick. But doing stuff like that with my Clemente playing days. But now I'm trying to finish it. So I like to go to those type of shows for that.
Yeah, it all depends on the quality of the photograph too. For some reason, I don't know, some of these vintage sellers, and even when I'm looking at some high-end stuff for my top 10 videos and stuff,
right?
They're asking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for some of these cards, and it's like a blurry lighting is terrible picture. I'm like, dude, take some time to do take a nice picture, a nice close-up picture, detailed, the coloring right, because now I won't say what it is because I want to save it for a video, but I bought a really cool card last night, and I was sort of hesitating pulling the trigger The eBay photo looked like it was done in a scanner, so it was like bright and light, and the colors on it, the registration was there. The colors seemed a little bit faded, just to other copies.
Right.
And I was doing some research, and I went on to PSA's website, and because it was a newer slab, and for the newer slabs, they've been taking pictures of it. So I looked up the certification. Now, the image that they took, I don't want to say night and day, but the grade that I got, I noticed a little hairline crease that you did not see in the eBay listing because of the lighting. Now, I still bought it because overall, that is not going to bother me whatsoever, and I got it for a good price. Fit well in my budget, and it's a really cool card. But it was because of that better photo that I saw that just on the left-hand side looks like it doesn't go through the card.
Right.
Just like a surface little wrinkle, which primarily gave it the grade. But the centering on it, if it's not 50-50, I mean, it is, and that card's hard to find centered. That's what drew it to me. So
are you a center guy? Are you a centering guy when it comes to your cards?
Yep.
What are you, Don? Corners, center?
I like to have them as centered as nicely as possible, but they can be a little off. And that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But I don't like them like extremely off.
Right. I'm definitely I like the borders. If the card has supposed to have borders, I like to have the borders there.
Yeah.
Some sort. It don't have to be 50-50 or but
and it depends on the card too.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely.
I bought some 53 Bowmans. My 53 Bowman Spawn is off center, top to bottom, left, one of the two. But my eye doesn't focus. There's certain cards where when I look at it, based on the design of the card, I notice off centering more than not. And when I do, those are ones I want centered better. There are other cards where my eye's drawn to the photo or something else about the card. Then I'm less concerned. It's what my eye sees first. That's for a particular card.
Going back to being able to look up cards on PSA, if I had just got a bunch of cards slabbed and I was going to sell them, I would just use PSA's photos.
People are doing it.
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, so I know of some people, some of my friends that actually do that.
Why not?
Go ahead, upload that image.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're really nice images. I mean, I don't know what scanning system they use, but it's not a regular flatbed scanner.
Right. I'm sure
I would have that seller had. Again, it was a nice looking card, but it looked faded. And some of the cards from like the 50s and stuff.
Who did you get again, John?
What?
Who did you get again?
I'm not saying. But it's a nice card. But
nice tease.
It's one of the cards on my 100 cards for $100,000. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I knew it had to be one of the 100. So yeah. That's what. How are you doing with that? Are you really having fun with that, or is it?
Yeah. I'm having a blast with it. The only thing is that this is the one I just picked up is card number 46. So I'm almost halfway there. The only problem is now I'm getting to the cards that, unless I really drop down to a really low grade, I'm looking at like $200 plus. So it's not like ones with my budget that I can just, buy one every couple of weeks or one a month and stuff like that. So I'll probably pick up hopefully a decent number at the National because I have some money saved up. But we're talking, $200, $300, $400, $500 cards and up now.
Right. So
I'm starting another list, which I'm going to be working on the video here soon. 100 cards for $10,000. For 10. So basically, they average out to about $100 a card. So I'm going to be working on that as well. That's where I can spend, $50, $75, $100, whatever here and there, a lot easier to buy. And they're ones I'm working on for player runs and other cards of filling in gaps, things like that. So that'll be fun as well, while I still continue on occasion now to add to the big list.
Right. That's interesting to hear how you go about that. because what I hate is when somebody does that and then it, because I could tell the way you tell this, you're still feeling the love for it. When it starts becoming a job, you could tell that too, and I could tell you're still loving it, and it's
awesome. Just money. It all comes down to money. You know, I mean,
yeah, you would love to have those cards.
Yeah, I mean, the cards on the list are like, dude, I'd love to have them, and you know, I hope someday I hope to have. I figure if I can get to 75 on that list, because once you get to the last 25, now you're talking. I mean, they're all big boy cards at that point, and multiple big boy cards. So I set myself up sort of. You know, I put a 52 Mano PSA 1 on there. Now, come on. I mean, so it's almost like the 300 greatest cards for Michael Payne. I don't do that one, but there's some really, really, really hard cards on that list. Like almost, I think the Ty Cobb's on there. So no, like, but it's still something for me to strive for, knowing that I'm not going to get all 100. But I think it would be a great success if I could ever get to 75 someday. And so I'm taking that, and then I'm starting other ones that are maybe more realistic that I can, you know, keep going as well.
Now the $10,000 one, are you going 100%? Is your goal on that one eventually?
Yeah, that one definitely, because I think the cheapest one is like $75, and even then, I'm probably going to get a card graded lower and maybe spend $40 on it. But in order to put the list together and it to equal 10,000. I had to go for higher grades to add up everything, but I'm always going to be shooting for nicer copy, lower grade, cheaper price type thing. So I think the most expensive card on that list is probably going to be like $175, 100, like maybe 200 at the most. Definitely something that's realistic at some point. So yeah, I'm shooting for 100% for that one.
Right. Yeah. I have about 50 different things I'm working on. That's part of
50 different.
I need it for myself. It's sort of self-medicating doing these lists because it gives me targets to look at. Because if not, I'm all over the place. I'm hunting eBay, doing general random searches for cards. It just and then I'm like, oh well, that one's nice, but am I gonna like this one better? Or like, what do I and I get stuck, and then I don't buy anything, and I'm like, I just this way. Oh, it's on my list. It's a card that I put on my list because it's one I want. I'm not just putting lists together of random cards. They're ones I would really like to have. So I'm like, oh, great, I can get that one, and I can get that one, and so it helps me focus, even though it's fairly broad.
So, would you say that's what inspired you to do that? Is to make a list and to make you focused on that?
Funny you should say that, Scott.
Yeah.
Which is not
like that? Today. It's almost like every once in a while.
Scott, go ahead. Says we make our guests pick the topics.
Yep.
Come out and tell us what your topic is. I was wondering when we were going to get to that.
Yep.
Well, Don got in touch with me and said that the guest comes up with a topic, and I have, and this is coming from a place of very deep interest, because I think all three of us, and this is the beauty of it, hobby in different ways. I love that. I got asked last night what makes a true collector, and I said the love of collecting. That I don't care what you're collecting, hubcaps, whatever it is.
Right.
But you have to be inspired, right, to do that. And I always love asking what inspires you to do why and how you do things. Like Don making those cabinets behind him. That was not only doing that was amazing because it's beautiful how he did it, but you could tell he had fun and was inspired to do that.
Oh, there were some days I wasn't having fun.
Well, you hit it very well. You hit it very well. You should have got Moynihan's dad to do it. You've been all right.
Yeah, his skill level's way above mine.
Yeah, but talking to John just showed why he's inspired. You can see the sparkle in his eye talking about it. That's why I was like, oh, you're still having fun doing it. And of course, he smiled. He's still smiling about it, talking about it, And I've been watching Don Live Don, he's on everybody's live.
Not anymore. I think Chris from Missouri is taking that title from
me. I think he has. But in that one that I text you that you did, you were the voice of reason in that one. But you
I don't
did
remember which one that was.
It was it doesn't matter. But anyway, we don't need to get into it.
Okay.
But you were talking about as a child, collecting who you collect, and now you're going back and kind of getting some of those guys and things like that. But like the 100 in that, I want to ask you, like, I know why I collect Clemente. My dad's stories about watching him play really sunk to me. And then I learned about Clemente and his story. It was so inspiring to me. I would like to know what makes y'all really collect players that you really never got to see play at live, right? I know you've seen Wade Boggs play. I'm talking about doing the 100 for 100 and a 10, or collecting a 53 Bowman, or Don doing, guys before he was living. That's where I'm trying to, what inspires you to do that?
Yeah, Don.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the two main guys I collect, as most people know, are Clemente and Stan Musial. Now, I'm from Pittsburgh, so it was kind of ingrained in you that I was alive when Clemente played, but I was so young that I don't remember seeing him play. I think it was 4 or 5 when he passed away. And he's just a legend in this city. And you just growing up, kind of like you said, Scott, hearing the stories about him. Now, Musial was a little different. Musial is also a Pittsburgh native. And to be honest, I know of one other guy, and he's not a YouTuber, and I'm sure there are others that really collect Musial. So part of it might be easier to get his stuff because I'm not competing against so many guys. But my dad used to call on his father-in-law's grocery store. My dad was a salesman for Colgate. So he never met Stan, but he met his father-in-law. He used to go in the store, and Stan's Polish and we're Polish. And there were just a lot of connections. It kind of reminded me of my dad a little bit, not athletically, but just the kind of person he is. And so that's how I got into Stan Musial, because I don't think a lot of people, even here in Pittsburgh, realize he's a Pittsburgh native.
Right. I just learned that
Denora,
right now.
Awesome. Right?
What's that?
It's Denora, Pennsylvania?
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep. So what about you, Scott? Because you're kind of, you got Star Wars, you've got baseball, you've got modern, you've got Mets, you got Gary Carter.
I am child of the 70s, right? So 71 born, grew up in the Star Wars. My mom actually is a collector. She collected bells, dolls, movies once the VCR DVD era came out. So I didn't learn it from I do have my dad's cards, but they were more of toys than a collection to him.
Right.
But me and my dad would sit there, and that's how we talked baseball, was through the baseball cards. Oh, here's a guy, look at his stats. I grew up in a very baseball heavy household, where a lot of people, how was your day? I would talk about, how was my day out in the backyard hitting baseballs at the dinner table. So it was a very baseball heavy household. And baseball cards is an extension to the game for me. I fell in love with catchers early on, Johnny Bench and Gary Carter. I fell in love with Gary Carter through a show called Baseball Bunch with Johnny Bench. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Yep.
I actually talked to Johnny Bench about that at one of the signings at the National. He held me there for a couple extra seconds to talk to me about it. I thought I got chills thinking about it, but that was awesome to me. But I didn't realize that the Expos was in another country, that they played baseball in another country and were part of our league. I thought that was all intriguing to me as a little kid. And then they were good on top of that. That team was very good. They got robbed because of a strike year. But and then when he went to the Mets and they won the World Series, that was it. I was a Mets fan for life. And but I collect things, and I'm more hooked into era of that I live in, why I watch things. Like you'll see some wrestling stuff behind me, some football, Gary Carter, Star Wars. But I try to stay focused. I'm very focused in those areas, and in baseball, I'm a little more looser. But like with Clemente, I'm already starting to think of another catcher that I'm going to start collecting because I love his story too, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I already have a couple of his cards, and that's Campanella. Mm-hmm. So. I get hooked into stories, and I was a catcher, love catching. I know Clemente doesn't fit the catcher thing, but that's where I'm at. Clemente was one of just my dad talking about him. My the two guys my dad talks about as a kid is Duke Snider and Clemente. My dad was a huge Brooklyn Dodgers fan. But talking about Clemente is just because he was so good. And a person, and how, I was born in 1971, so I was only like 2 or 3 in his passing. So,
he just New Year's Eve 1972,
right? So. Yeah, so I was 1, not even 2 yet. So, that's kind of how I am, and then once I get passionate about something, I get my hooks in. I'm full bore. It gets added to my list. But like I said, when I go to shows, I look more for vintage and some autos that maybe I can't find on the eBay. Because I've talked about this before. I don't know if y'all find yourself doing this, but when you get on eBay, you're like ultra focused looking on something for something. You don't cast a wide net. Mm-hmm. So when I go to a show, I have a chance to maybe not be so focused on what I'm looking for. I might see something that I'm really, hey, this will fit my collection. I wasn't even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see things there that you don't know about. Like it's hard to search it on eBay if you don't know about it, unless, I do Stan Musial and maybe I'll see something, but I have to go through 6,000 listings to find that rare thing in my price range.
Right. So when we met, you bought a Stan Musial, right? Japanese magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of that's kind of where I'm at when I live show opposed to buying on eBay. Usually when I'm on eBay, I am looking more for the newer stuff that came out that fits my Mets. But then I'm very focused. I'm Pete Alonso and the rookies that came out. I'm very rookie focused. And that's it. And because I don't know if y'all watched any of my stuff this week. I'm kind of done on sealed stuff. It's the entertainment value. I even gave you guys I'm like, the vintage guys have it right. I'm just like,
I'll be honest, I have not seen it this week. So I'll have to
yeah, that's fine. I'm more, I did buy a blaster because it was $15 where it's supposed to be today. Because I love watching baseball. As soon as season starts, I'm watching a game every night. At least I have it on,
right?
In the room. I might have something else on with that on or doing whatever. But that's how I am. Is my passion is for more of the reason why I played. I dressed like Gary Carter. My dad used to get mad because I have wristbands and I was pimped. I asked to have.
Did you have curly hair?
I asked to get my hair done like that, and my mom said, "HE hockey sticks, no." And and that was back when I had a full head of hair. And then I came home because we all shaved it with sidewalls for a baseball team, and yeah, that didn't go over well in high school. That was before the picture that I had for this year with my hair with a flock of seagulls going on. But
there's a lot of catchers in this YouTube community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'll find that the catchers are the smartest ones. So
know what it was.
But that's the reason why. And I like everybody else, I think we all have seen the Burns, 9 innings,
right?
Plus the 10th inning, and I went to the Hall of Fame this year. That's life changing to somebody that loves the game like we do.
Was this your first time?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and thanks to Mike O, he has him and his family has a house not too far from there.
Oh really?
Yeah. So free place to stay. Went up there with him and his dad, with Papa O, and I've always seen it. Didn't know what I know it was a museum, but I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Didn't know they had the movie in there. That's a little bit of a tearjerker until you see the, it's very well done. I like the fact that they highlighted Babe Ruth on one floor, which we wouldn't have the game we have now if it wasn't for Babe Ruth. That brought it to the forefront when he did. And then the third floor highlighting Hank Aaron at the front, I thought was very classy. And it had a section of international. It had a huge international Hispanic section when I went. That was awesome. Had Clemente's Puerto Rican jersey there, and so I thought that was pretty cool. I did miss the Gary Carter. They had a full equipment of Gary Carter a few months before, and they didn't have that when I went, but it was cool. I went into the room where they're playing the videos and you could touch the screen and pick a video. But when I walked in was Gary Carter's first at bat or first game for the Mets when he hit the game walk-off home run. It was like I was supposed to walk in at that right. And Mike was videoing it. He walked in beside. I was like, yeah, wow, this is awesome. And I think we're planning on going sometime again this year.
Are you? Now that's not Mike's full-time home, is it? Doesn't he live in?
No. He lives in the Philly area.
Yeah, I thought. Okay, so it's like a
hunting
weekend house or hunting place. Okay,
it's up in the mountains. It's beautiful. When he was telling me, I was like thinking I'm going to this little hunting lodge. It's got like 8 bedrooms. I was like, and I was like, so I think me, him, and Wester Griff and Papa O might go again. So
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you been there, John?
Yeah, I went. I took my son up when he was in Little League. So he was maybe around 10 or 11. So that would have been maybe 12 years ago. So I've just been that one time. But oh my gosh, he thoroughly enjoyed it. So did I.
Right.
I know at the time they had the section for League of Their Own, the women's professional league. They had a big exhibit for that. I'm not sure if that's a permanent exhibit or not. I remember that, and just the history of the stuff. I mean, regardless of the player, just some of the uniforms and the equipment and the balls and just the players, the whole history of it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had some of Mickey Cochran catcher's equipment there, and I'm also looking for something of his that I would like to add to my collection as well, that I can afford. But they had his equipment there, and I was like, how? I know what I wore in the 80s, right? And I feel like that is archaic to what they wear now. My gosh, of course they didn't throw it as hard, but man, that ball coming off the bat, coming back at you, still came at you.
Right.
And it's hard. I mean,
I showed this on on a video recently. This is when I went there and I saved the stub. I just found this, and it was $9.50. You can see I went in 1996. So that's what.
See, they didn't even give us a ticket.
Well, yeah, back then. So it was $9.50. Who knows what it is now?
It was $23 for me to go.
Okay, that's not
and
too
I was
bad.
more than happy to.
Yeah, I mean, this is 27 years ago. So
yeah,
right. So the league of their own, they have that plus, like they've added other women, like you have the San Francisco Giants lady, the coach, the Yankees coach. They've done other women that contributed to the game.
okay.
A little bit bigger, it sounds like, but that was really cool too. I really enjoyed that, and now they're redoing the Negro League section. They had that closed when I was there. That's another reason why I would like to go back to that.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. If you can go back in time and watch a game, that's where I would go. I want to go see Josh Gibson play.
Me too. Yeah.
That would be. We don't have video of that and stuff. I would love to see him in his prime, and Satchel Paige pitch in his prime.
Yeah.
That would have been incredible.
Rick, Vintage Oddball Cards in the text thread recently, just a couple of days ago, said who were the 3 players you'd want to interview, and Paige and Gibson were 2 of the ones I said that I'd want to see. Yeah. Just because I feel like there's so much footage on Babe Ruth and Ted Williams and those guys, and there's like just what you said. There's nothing.
Right.
Gibson.
Right. It's
a little bit on age.
Right. That history, a lot of that's lost because, they played for the love most of the time, going out, play 3 games in a day and all that stuff. Like
to love and to make a living.
Right. Hard. Yeah. It's an incredible that story of the Negro Leagues is. And what they went through is stupid, but part of our history.
Right.
So I would love to go back and be able to see them play.
Yeah, but especially the game where Josh and Satchel Paige faced each other, where Paige struck him out.
Right. Or even like some of those barnstorming games where they play like an all-star team and whoop the crap out of them for the major leagues or something. You want to see how true those stories are because they're just stories now. It's folklore because we don't have really anything to back up those stories. So, and I mean, my gosh, if they actually kept stats from those leagues 100%, who knows like how many real innings Satchel Paige pitch or some of those guys pitch back in the days.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. And I really love that section in the plaque room where they inducted all of them at the same time. And you get to sit there in one section and really read it and learn about it. And that was, that type of thing, it's not just part of baseball history. That's American history at that point. So.
Yeah, I need to go back. It's been so long. Like I said, 27 years. A lot has changed. Mm-hmm. But it was funny. So I actually went up, like I said, with my father-in-law and his friend. And I had only been dating my wife a few months at that point. So she was a little nervous about me going on this trip with her dad. But we went through it during the day. And it was in September, so it wasn't very crowded. And that night we stayed in town. It was still open, and I went back over at night while her dad and his friend stayed back, and I was the only one in there. Talk about being awesome. Just walking around there all by myself.
We went on a rainy day in October. It was my birthday weekend. On top of that, I chose that. Mike said, pick a weekend. I picked that. But it was rainy and cold, and it weren't many people there. There was times where we were the only people on the floor.
Yeah. Something kind of neat about that. I'm sure it's awesome election weekend, seeing with all the players there and stuff. But, especially if it's one of your guys getting in, I totally get that. But I kind of like the solidarity of it,
right?
Not dealing with the crowd.
I'd want to go
as much time as I want, looking at things and.
Yep.
I just wish they would make the area bigger for the sportscasters, the announcers. It's very small, mainly just pictures. I don't think they got as much there for them. They did have a room with every baseball movie ever made.
Really?
Like listed. Yeah. And I was just like, and they have cool posters up for a lot of the games and for a lot of the movies. And they were, and then outside of that, they were showing the full clip of Who's on First.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've seen that. That's
right. So that was pretty cool. And then I did buy a plaque of Gary Carter. It's a see-through glass one, replica of his plaque.
Oh, I've seen those. Those are cool.
Yeah, so I have that, and I bought that. They didn't have the Johnny Bench one. I was a little upset, but it was, like I said, I mean, you hate to say life-changing for a sport, because you just go in there for a sport, with everything going on in the world. But if you love baseball, and then I'm going to the Football Hall of Fame when I go to Cleveland this year.
Okay.
So
that's actually fairly close to me. That's where we're kind of our last 2 dogs from Canton, Ohio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a little under 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
From Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because for me, I'm driving up, and it's 7 hours for me from where I live at here. It's a straight shot.
Yeah, from where you're coming through Southern Ohio, probably, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just going to go to Canton the first day. I think I might go to a Cleveland game the next night, and then go into our Airbnb that night.
Yeah,
so.
Cleveland's a nice stadium. That's what I was telling people. I just went with Bob Lewis to the Clemente Museum here in Pittsburgh, and that's my second trip there. That is amazing too. Just, the owner of that museum got to be good friends with Vera Clemente, his wife. So
Right.
she's donated all kinds of stuff to him, and it's really cool.
I've heard that. I like to talk when we go to the National that Clemente guys. I saw the Clemente stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. They're one of the guys that's in that group. I played baseball against him in high school. He was a coach at a neighboring high school, and I was like, "Oh, you remember and I told him the coach. He goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." So I played against him in high school. Of course, he don't remember me, but I don't remember him either. But it was funny. We started talking. So
well, that's cool. Yeah, everyone got those Clemente cards from his collection.
Right.
I'd like to get one of those if there's any left.
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to get. I know there's Gary Carter cards out there from his collection, floating around. They're tough to find. I'm sure Gary Carter collectors got them all, but
yeah.
Are they graded and labeled as part of his?
Some of them are graded and labeled as Carter's collection or from Gary Carter. Because I've seen some Nolan Ryan ones that way, and I've seen
really,
yeah.
Like if you zoom, let me see if I can get this here. This Clemente,
the State Museum collection.
State Museum collection.
State Museum, yeah,
right.
Yeah, so this Clemente was in Museos, which is kind of cool because it puts both of my guys.
Right.
That's
cool. Yeah. I'm sure like one day it'll be like Mike Trout collection when his stuff comes out.
Sure you gotta wonder if they were just given this stuff and it was just they threw it in a closet or something. It wasn't like they collected it. Like I'm pretty sure they wasn't collecting Dick Perez cards.
Well, there's some collectors right now.
Yeah, I know.
Ball. I mean, a couple of them that the relief pitcher, the starting pitcher for the Phillies, Stamens. He has a YouTube channel.
Well, Dimitri Young used to have a huge collection.
And all those PSA 10s, yeah.
Could you imagine? Like, I'm just going to go get autographs from everybody.
Yeah. And he sold them all.
Yeah. So, that's pretty neat. But yeah, that Hall of Fame, that's something that I didn't know. I really want to go back. I spent one day, and I feel like, I have my little sign here for New York Mets exhibits. They have like each team. When you go in, they have a piece of paper telling you like what each team has there on exhibit, like players. So it's pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. And then they have card shops and everything on the whole street.
Although from what I recall, going to some of those shops, the prices are maybe a little inflated because
you're
going to get any deals betting any cards there. But yeah,
we found there is one called Mickey Mantle shop or something like that, Mantle shop, and I bought hats in there, which were actually at good price. They had throwback hats. I got me, of course, a cool Expos hat. They had, I mean, you name it. I picked up that and a couple other hats, and but they had boxes in there actually at regular price. We were kind of shocked. We didn't buy anything, but we were looking at prices, and of course, everybody had autographed baseballs because from all the autographs,
right?
Yeah.
And they were, good grief, those were. I was laughing at those prices.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, ain't no way. So I yeah, but you can go in, it was just boxes and boxes of cards. I mean, shops, and it was like going down Main Street in some little town. If you haven't, I'm sure you haven't said you haven't been there in 23 years, Don. I bet you that street hasn't changed.
Probably not.
I bet you the same dust is on some of those cards when you were
it's not sold.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's come up with our trivia question here. So
yeah, Don's bailing me out because I forgot a trivia question. So Don, hit us with it.
So there's 2 Hall of Famers born on the same day, not the same year, but same month and day, and from the same hometown.
Oh my God, did they have the same doctor too?
I don't think so.
I have a guess. I think it's, I don't want to say too easy, but it's the first thing that came into my mind. So it's they have the same birthday, not year, but month and day.
Month and day is the same. The year is different.
Yeah. But they're not from the same place.
What do you mean? The same town, yeah.
Yeah, and the same town.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think I know then. Scott, do you want to give a guess at it?
No, but this is going to be this will be something I'll never forget.
All right, Musial and Griffey Jr.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
You said Denora earlier.
Yeah, I said Denora. I was like, yeah.
I was like, okay, I know it's going to be Musial. I knew it had to be Musial. I didn't know who the other one was going to be.
I knew Griffey was born in Denora as well, but
I did not know that
the birth date I wasn't sure on, and I'm like, I thought I read somewhere.
Like Griffey's dad was born there, and I think Griffey was pretty young. Like Junior was born there, but he wasn't raised there. He was raised in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But on the back of his card it says born Denora, but like you said, he was raised primarily in Cincinnati.
You said that it does that. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at a whole shelf of Griffey's. I could have just reached over there and looked at one.
Yeah, I think it's November 21st. The one was 1920, and whatever year Griffey was born, like 68 or 69. That's like when you said the same doctor. I was like, I hope not.
I'll try to put them, maybe they're close together. I don't know.
Stan probably didn't even have a doctor. They probably had some old lady in the house and delivered them. And back then, geez.
Yeah. Well,
Mom Scott cooked dinner afterwards.
Scott, you mentioned that. You mentioned that your parents were collecting. Your mom's a collector. Mm-hmm. I sort of have that collecting gene as well. Not from my parents. My dad never did. He's never been into sports. Never collected cards. My mom had cards when she was young in the 50s. Of course, my grandmother has long since thrown them away. Right. But she probably would have had. We're talking early to mid 50s cards, and with the neighbors set them on the garage and they'd flip. So I'm sure they would have been all beaten up, but she could have very well had some of those key rookies from the mid to early to mid 50s. But it's my grandfather on my dad's side. He was a collector. He primarily collected coins. He collected books, but not really much of a collection. His thing was coins. And I remember, even though he passed away when I was 11, I still remember going in on a Sunday or on a weekend, and he'd buy rolls of coins from the bank. Go, hey, give the bank $5 and get $5 worth of nickels. And I'd sit at the table with him, and he's like, okay, John. And he'd have those books out where you'd put the coins in. All right, we're looking for a 1968 with a P on it. I'm missing one. So we'd go through. So that was sort of, I don't want to say ingrained in me, because he had, it wasn't just, oh, hey, I found a silver dime. Oh, I'm going to collect that. He wanted like the entire run, try to fill those books. And so, I got to say, oh, hey, trying to find that particular coin with the date and mint mark. And so I started dabbling a little bit into coins, just for my grandfather. He'd start me off with some books. That never stuck. My grandfather on my mom's side started a little stamp collection, which I have, but
my dad was huge.
Never stuck with me as well. I've always loved baseball. And so I think that collecting gene of like, hey, and beyond Wade Boggs, which I've talked about multiple times, the vintage side, as you said, I'm collecting players that I never watched in person, never saw on TV, never listened to on the radio, that type of thing. And for me, it has a lot to do with the history of the game. The players that all new players are matched up on. Like, oh, well, this is the greatest player since so-and-so. Well, you had to have that so-and-so player to begin with for these newer players to be compared to. So that's an important part of the game, even from a modern standpoint. You have those veterans, great Hall of Famers that everyone compares themselves to. And honestly, it's just the look of the cards. Just I'm working on something for this Vintage 100 Index. I'm going to be doing a video with Mike Baseball Collector, and just going through some of those cards, just especially from the 50s. Just
original art cards.
How beautiful they look. I mean, it's to just say like I have. I mean, again, it's a piece of cardboard, but it's more than that. Again, it's the history of that player. It's the depiction of that player. The fact that some of these cards are 50, 60, 70 now years old. And just the design and beauty of them, especially from the mid 50s, early to mid 50s, the Bowmans and the early Topps cards, they're just works of art. They're beautiful.
I agree. I love the old Bowman.
And that's why I collect. It's I have these 100 card lists and stuff, which just keeps me focused. But it's I don't watch a lot of baseball. This the modern game and stuff. I'll catch a game here and there. So I'm not really up on the new players and teams. I follow the Mets loosely and Red Sox. But it's the older players and going after some of their cards, and it's just a little. It's my little piece of baseball history is how I look at baseball cards.
Right.
So that's sort of where my how I started and have the passion for collecting. It's family, like your mom and I think you said to some extent your dad, but so it's in my genes, and it's a game that I love. I played, was terrible. You said catcher and stuff. Well, when I played Little League, they stuck me way out in one of the outfield positions where there was someone actually in front of me. So we played with 4 outfielders, and they stuck me in the corner because I was useless. That was my Little League career.
At least you got that going for you.
As just a very quick side note, I had a high school reunion. I think it was maybe our 15th high school reunion, and we were talking about it. And there were a group of guys in my graduating class that were maybe the year down. There were a couple older kids. made it to not only the Little League state championship, they were one game away from the Eastern Regionals to going to the Little League World Series. So we were one game away.
Right.
And of course, everyone remembers that run and all that stuff. And they're talking to me and we're reminiscing about that. And they're like, well, I was putting myself down, of course, not being a good ball player. And they're like, what are you talking about, John? You were good at baseball. And I'm like, how many drinks have you had? You don't remember how terrible I was? I mean, I
thought you were going to say
I was not good at all.
I thought you were going to say
like,
they didn't remember you playing.
Good. Like, no.
I thought they were going to say you played. I don't remember you playing.
I would have been like, yeah, remember? I was like, it took me about 10 minutes to run in from the outfield. I was so far out. Yeah.
Well, you talk about the collecting gene. So my dad was a big stamp collector, but it got to the point where he said they're pretty much worthless. They're only worth like the 4 cents or whatever was on it. So you would get a letter from my dad and it would have like 12 stamps on it, covering up almost the whole letter until it got to the 65 cents. He kept using them all up. But man, as a kid, I collected beer cans, and I wasn't old enough to drink, obviously. And I'd have my parents, they would open it from the bottom so I could still have the tab. And my dad actually built me a shelf similar to these. We had all the beer cans on. I collected keychains, patches. So now it's just cards, but I'm lucky my wife lets me collect this. But yeah, I've always been collecting something.
Right. Yeah, I've been that way. I don't want you to see my video game collection also have, but I mean my grandmother collected Cardinals statues of birds. She loved Cardinals. She would sit there at the back window and just watch the birds all day. So it's a long history of that in my family. But my grandma would also, we have pictures of her throwing me t-ball, plastic balls as
wiffle balls.
As a kid, because like I said, I grew up in a family that was very much about the sport, and I showed some talent, so they were feeding the beast. So that's how that came about. So, and I enjoyed coaching more than I did playing, to be honest. So I did that for 7 years, so had fun with that. But yeah, I love hearing the stories of why people collect, how they collect. Don's been on the channel. I've asked him that question. I'll ask John, I'll have you on one day and you're going to have to repeat all of this again. So.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I love talking about it because it's
right.
I love this hobby.
The passion, I do. I get so caught up with it. When I made a video about thinking about quitting, Don did give me a call about, hey man, you all right?
That I do remember. I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. You can tell me afterwards what the other one was, but
right.
I do remember that. I was a little worried about you.
Yeah,
you're okay.
And because I do. And this whole YouTube family has been an extension of the hobby, right?
No doubt.
Feel like not everybody is. Mike O talks about it all the time. We're just a small part of the hobby. People that watch YouTube, it's just you go to national and you see we broke a record for how many people were there, but how many of them knew who any of us were, right?
Yeah,
very small. And most of us were other YouTubers, right?
Right.
That know each other. So, I feel like we are a lucky few, and we're a very small part of this YouTube world.
Yeah, I don't think I would have this room if I didn't see other YouTubers with their rooms. I probably would have just kept them in a box somewhere and not even thought about it. And that's just a very small part of it. It's more getting to know all you guys that make it fun. Like I've said before, I'm not real sure I would go to nationals if it wasn't for the crew that's there now.
Right.
But I
can get any car show.
Yeah.
But the national, the people, I mean, even before I knew, even walking around and just talking to random, sitting at a table, talking to whoever sat down, you instantly have something to talk about.
Right.
All kinship. We were all peers when it comes to that. And we instantly have something to talk about. And I can't wait for the next one. So
yeah, my enjoyment of this hobby 10x or more since being on YouTube.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd still be, if I wasn't on YouTube, I'd still be collecting. But my wife's supportive. She's not into it. My son has gone past his little interest in. I mean, he's going to be graduating from Penn State, moving on to some science job and all that stuff. So he's not into cards anymore. So I don't have any other friends that are into card like locally. So if it wasn't for, YouTube, yeah, I'd still collect. I'd still enjoy it, but definitely not as much as just being able to share, my collection, my pickups, but watching others be so excited about the cards that they pick up, and these interactions, these conversations here, meeting up at the national, all that stuff. It's like a brotherhood, and I should say sisterhood. There's some female collectors out there. I don't want to leave them out, but a general brotherhood of collectors that we get to share in everyone's joy, not just ours, but everyone else's.
Yeah. I mean, we're all nerds that love this, and at the end of the day, it's other people might not understand us in our family or friendship that we have at our locale in the real world, but when we get on here, we instantly have a language and all this stuff that we instantly, and it carries over outside of the actual hobby. So
absolutely,
because you ask someone who doesn't, you try to start a conversation. Oh, you're into baseball cards, and it's usually, well, what's your most expensive card, or
exactly,
or what's your rarest card? I mean, because that's all they don't understand, all the nuances and just how deep of a dive we get into the cards, the players, the history, and everything. And they don't understand. Nothing against them, that they're just not interested in what we do. And
another big difference too, with this community. So on Facebook, I follow a lot of woodworking communities, and there's one called Woodworking for Beginners. Well, if these guys are beginners, then I'm never going to make it, because I'm like, you guys are not beginners. But some of the responses, these guys are brutal to some of these guys. And it's like, and I've never felt that here, with no matter what you pick up, even if it's, someone's seen that card 1,000 times and they're like, oh, that's awesome, good for you. Or, it's a $20 card coming from a guy that's buying $10,000 cards, congratulating you on it,
that's the enthusiasm you're showing for having that card.
Right.
We're happy that you're happy.
Yeah.
I've been saying that. Man, the love of it is what I hate the Phillies. But watching Mike O show his cards off, he has a love that's infectious for it.
Yeah.
And that's why me and Mike got to be so good friends, because me and him have a kindred, because a lot of people hate the Mets, but guess what you're going to see when you watch my channel?
Yep.
And
if I would have known you two were Cowboys fans, I wouldn't even got on here. But it's too late now. Well, and neither one of you even live in Dallas. At least Moynihan lives there. I'll give him that. I understand. You two. I don't know what's wrong with you guys.
Right. Well,
middle of Pennsylvania, and I'm not a Steelers or Eagles fan. It's
So I do want to say I was a history major in college, so I love the history part. I connect to that. That's why when somebody talks and I dive deep into players' histories, that's how I get connected to them. When I do, I don't. I like vintage. I collect vintage, but I always say, only got enough money to buy certain hobby things.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I have to have a very deep connection to what I'm buying. And that's, I hope people see that in my collection when I talk about it. And I think they do. Even when they see my Star Wars stuff, Don.
Not gonna lie, I go to the next show. Not my thing. But that's all right, man. You love it.
Yeah.
You know, I know you're going to show something else I like. It's like, well,
I have vintage Batman. I got vintage Batman. So
now my son would be into your channel. He's into all kinds of Marvel and yeah, I think he's caught the collector's gene for me, but not the same stuff. He could care less about it.
I'm almost finished. I got 10 cards to get graded, and I'll be done with the 66 Batman run graded, the whole set.
Well, that's pretty cool. See, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not my thing, but you know,
I have the 79 Topps Bazooka Gum cartoon. I have that 33 card set graded.
When you say cartoon, is that Batman or what is that?
No, it's the baseball. They did 79 cartoons in the Bazooka Joe style of the square bazooka gum back in 79.
The
2 series.
The wrappers? Or
the wrapper.
Oh, okay.
I remember that's what you're talking about. The set of the wrapper.
They had an outer wrapper that was still Bazooka Joe.
Yeah.
Then the inner wrapper, instead of a Bazooka Joe cartoon, it was a MLB player, and it had a cartoon telling you something about the player, and then down in the corner was like a rule of baseball.
Oh, I don't know that I'm familiar with those.
Yeah, I was not until I saw it at a Chantilly show about 5 years ago with my dad. I bought the set for $15, and I've been slowly getting it graded. And
do you have one near you that we can see?
I have it in the.
All right, don't worry, no biggie.
Room. I mean, but they did a repeat of it this year in archives. They did a throwback where this is a regular card, where the other one was a square.
Okay.
79. But that kind of gives you the feel of it. You know, I can show one some other time, but yeah, I have that complete set, all 33 SGC graded.
And that's from 79?
79 Topps. It's just 79 Topps cartoons, but it's from the Bazooka gum. The little square gum that was a nickel back in the day.
Yep.
At your convenience, or that somebody would have a bucket of it on the bench.
Right. Yeah, I know.
And they had it was 2 series. They had series 1 and series 2, and 33.
So it had the current players from 79, or did they have
79, some? Yeah. So I was upset because the Expos was Russ Grimsley.
Okay.
For whatever reason. But they had like Pete Rose with the Phillies.
Hey, you know who the Pirate was? Was it Stargell or Parker? Or
I believe it was Stargell. They might have had, because a couple of teams had a couple of players.
Oh, okay.
So the Reds was Johnny Bench. They had Carlton and Rose, and I think they might have had Parker and Stargell. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Well, Bazooka's base was Brooklyn, so they may have had, if there was actually, say, 33 cards, if there weren't any checklists, there'd probably be an opportunity for a couple teams to have more than one player. So
there was actually, I know for a fact there was a few, because back then, was it 26 teams, 28 teams?
Yeah, I don't remember.
So that it was some couple of teams that had more than one, the great teams had, because I think it was like Rusty Staub for the Mets, if I remember correctly.
Well, 79, there probably weren't too many.
Yeah, it wasn't, the Mets wasn't hitting yet. So I really like it, that cartoon look. I went to look to see who the artist was, and there's no I can't find it anywhere. They don't have any artist name credited to it, so I don't know who did the drawings, but I'm sure it was the same people that was doing the Bazooka Joe cartoons at the time.
How have they come in graded? Because I can imagine they were all folded up, so they're going to have creases.
Right. So the best one I got was a 5. I was ecstatic with that. Yeah. Most of them were like 3.5. Yeah. They're wax. It's a wax paper. It's a wax feeling paper, but of course it's creased.
Yeah. Now, so I would think that would.
Mangini told me he has an uncut sheet of it, well, of course he's he's going to have something like that.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that. I told him that's something that I'm sure it's pretty cool. But so I know Mike got one of Carlton, I believe, and he actually had the wrapper attached to it. So but his got a 5, I believe. But mine come just without the wrapper. It's the inner wrapper. Mm-hmm. I love food and beverage. I've always been a food and beverage kid growing up. If I found it in the shelf, my parents had to buy it. So I can get the cards out of it. My grandma, if she found something, she would buy it. So I get the cards. So I've always been a food and beverage guy. And
I love the Drake's cards, the early 80s Drake's cards.
Yes. And
yeah.
I just always been drawn to those, to that stuff. And I going down the rabbit hole of collecting Carters, finding out like the discs, like the 7-Eleven discs were regional, different colors, all that stuff was fascinating to me for whatever reason. I bought a super collector's collection of Gary Carter stuff. So I kind of cheated, but I got it all. I have stuff that have blank backs, blank fronts, all the testers. Yes, it's got the back, but it's a white front. Huh. There was actually some in the basement collection. JT contacted me and asked me if I needed it. I was like, believe it or not, I already have that. Wow. So shocking enough. So yeah, I'm pretty much good with the playing days of Gary Carter's. I got going on 2,000 copies. Different.
You're up there with John with his Wayne Boggs. Jeez, guys.
Yeah, I would my bucket list for Gary Carter is having somehow finding equipment of his catching gear.
Yeah.
I would love to have his catching gear. Something. I would love to have any of it. That's why I wanted to see it at the Smithsonian. I wanted to see who actually owned it because they put on there donated by.
Oh, yeah.
Just to see like who owns this stuff. Is it his family or like it's out there?
Right.
So I have a Mets jersey autoed by him. I want to get an Expos one autoed by him. So I have a bat, I have a ball. I just need some of his equipment. So I gotta have it. you know how it is, John. You gotta have it.
Yep. Well, hey, Scott, this has been a great conversation. I know we can probably go on for like another hour or two, as a lot of our shows can do, but we try to keep this in within an hour. I'm sure we can maybe have some follow up or whether online, offline, whatever. Really appreciate you coming on. This was again great conversation about different topics. Don and I always seem to manage to bring someone on, and the discussion goes in a different direction than any other episode we've done. So really appreciate you coming on, just talking to us about the passion that you have of collecting, how you started. And so, yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you accepting my invitation, and
anytime.
Enjoyed having you on.
And I already have an idea. I haven't reached out to him yet, but I think I know who I'd like to have on our next episode, and it could be really fun conversation as well. So with that, for everyone that has lasted this long and watching us, we really appreciate it for our first episode of 2024. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.